Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on this nice summer day. Stay cool in your houses while you get to watch this webinar before you get your day started. I'm Christy Wilbert, Senior Vice President of the Medicare Offerings Department at URL Insurance Group. Just want to go over a few housekeeping items before we get started today. First, go ahead and click on your chat box on the bottom right of your screen. That's going to pop up our live chat. You can chat with us throughout the presentation today. There's also a spot for Q&A. You can put it in there. We will get to them at the end. You can put it in the chat as well, whatever is easier for you. This webinar today is going to be recorded, so you can go back and watch it later if your phone rings or a client comes in, whatever happens. You know, life gets in the way sometimes. We have a great presentation for you today. We are doing a webinar on Enroll Here. I don't know if you've heard about them yet, but they are everywhere. So I had the luxury of watching them live and seeing them at MedicareCon and Medicarians. Both of those two conferences are one of the largest gatherings in the Medicare industry every year. It's not just agents, FMOs are there, carriers are there. It's thousands and thousands of people. So like I said, I had the luxury of watching them present. I'm so happy we have the opportunity to share it with you guys today. We have John Sauer here he's the Vice President of Sales at Enroll here. And I did check out his LinkedIn this morning. He has such a long history of bringing a lot of value to the companies that he works with. He's super passionate about growing your business. So he's definitely a gentleman that you want in your corner. And he's here to help. So take full advantage of it. And I'll turn it over to you, John.
Right on. Thank you so much, Christy. How you doing, everybody? My name's John. I am the VP of Sales here at Enroll here. Just a little bit about me. My background is tech sales. I've done it for the last 5.5, 6 years or so. I worked at another company that was in the lead generation space. And so, yeah, Enroll here we are an inbound dialer. We do a few things, but we're an inbound dialer system primarily, basically giving your agents the ability to have telephony, right? Like a dialer system. So if you've ever used, some sort of like VoIP system or, some sort of virtual telephony, that's what we do. And so essentially you now plug your agents into seats. Everybody has a login to the platform. We are a SaaS platform, right? And so now the agents have the ability to dial out, and whoever's admin, and there can be multiple for the platform, have the ability to see the day-to-day activity of the agents. How long they've been on the phone? What's their talk time, pause time? How many phone calls have they taken? Stuff like that. This is just giving further visibility into like day-to-day stuff. But when we built Enroll here, we wanted to design a dialer system that stood out and was tailor-made for folks in the health insurance, Medicare, ACA space, right? So there are a lot of dialer systems out there. Five9, Vici, Convoso, all great products, right? Fantastic. But this was made specifically with the Medicare agency in mind, right? And so a lot of the features that I'll show you in the demo of our software platform are really, again, tailor-made towards, the issues that agencies run into, the pitfalls, especially with newer businesses. And so everything we've built, again, is designed to help out the agencies grow their business, put things on autopilot, and essentially, take a load off your plate so you can focus on scaling your business, optimizing, and growing. And so let me get into the demo here. Again, great to meet everybody, but I'll go camera off and I'll show you the platform. All right. Can everybody, can't hear you, but if you could see my screen.
You can, we can.
All right. Perfect. All righty. So when you first log into the platform, right, this is what you'll see here. So this Enroll here, again, ground up build. This is not a reskin of another software. This is an original ground up build by our engineers, our team, right? And so again, when you come in, we designed the system to look, very easy. We didn't want anything to be, too scary for the agencies using our platform. This is, technology, and some stuff can look really convoluted. And so we designed a software that, really easy on the eyes, really simple, but also very powerful. And so when, an agent or the admin first logs in, this is the admin side. So for whoever would be in charge of the agency or of like the call center, whatever it may be, this is what they would see, right? So how many agents are logged in for the day? Who's waiting for calls? Who's ready? Who's calling out? So just basic statuses, right? Like dialer statistic stuff. Disposition is essentially wrap up. So basically when an agent is done with a phone call on their side, and I can show you what the agent login looks like. When an agent is done with the phone call, they can set essentially what happened, right? There's a bunch of different disposition selections. Did the person say, hey, I'm good. I don't want to, I don't want to quote, or, where's it, just don't call me back, or maybe it was an enrollment, right? The agents can actually, we can integrate with the different enrollment tools, and your agents can fire that enrollment code to whatever is it, whether it's Sunfire or whatever other tool you're using to do the actual enrollments. And that's how we're able to actually calculate their closing rate in the software. Now the agents can pause themselves again. So if the agents are anybody working for you is, grabbing lunch, or they have to go pick up their kids, whatever it may be, they can pause themselves, and essentially they cannot take phone calls during that time, right? Now you would see here all your agents and their statuses. So these are the statuses. You would see what's going on. Really neat. You can actually listen to any live phone call as they're happening in real time. And instead of like some other dialers, they have like a barge in feature where whoever's admin can then communicate, like talk to Elizabeth here, and then she can hear them, but the client can't hear the person, and it just gets confusing for the agent. We have a simple chat feature. So you can basically listen in and then chat Elizabeth and be like, hey, maybe Elizabeth's training, maybe she's brand new. And so you could chat them while they're on their phone calls and be like, hey, slow down, you're steamrolling them, or, build more rapport, or you missed this part of the compliance, right? So just awesome feature that we have. Again, really great for training, really there just to help, better the agents, because, that's something that all agencies go through. To get further information of like live performance, you would click here on any of the names, and you could see, okay, for Michelle today, this is how many hours she's been logged in. She's taken 19 calls. 12 of those were incoming. 7 of them were, she outbound dialed. You can use our system to outbound dial all day long. 10 of them were billable, right? Her closing rate was 20%. Her CPA was 110. Now I'll explain a little bit further here. So I'm not sure if anybody's heard of this, but we have what we call our marketplace, right? So we have about 50 to 60 different vendors that send us inbound phone calls in real time. Inbound calls coming from Google, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. If you ever see a phone number on an advertisement on your phone, that is a tracking number. That is going to grab data on you, aggregate data on you, recording of you, and then it's going to route you somewhere to monetize it. So every phone number you see on TV, on any sort of like marketing material, I don't care what it is, a billboard, it's literally going to grab data on you and it's going to route you somewhere to monetize as a lead, right? So all of the vendors that we work with send us inbound phone calls. We essentially act as a wholesale buyer for these calls. And then we offer it at cost to the agents that use our platform. And so because we house the vendors in our system, the admin can decide, okay, I want Michelle to be in 5 different vendor queues, right? All the vendors are different in terms of pricing and buffer times, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But because we house the vendors, we can tell you when the calls go billable for the agents. So the admin, the agency can keep track of, okay, Michelle, we've paid for 10 of the phone calls. We know that because we have the vendors in the system. We keep track of when those calls get counted as billable. And because that Michelle can actually send the enrollment to whatever system they're using, we're able to calculate her closing rate and her CPA in real time. So you could literally at the middle of the day, end of the day, an hour into the day, you could see how Michelle is performing in literally her closing rate, second to second, minute to minute. Right. You would see, again, just more basic information, her talk time, how long she's waited in total for phone calls. If you have your agents, you want them like, don't be pause longer than an hour, right? You could do that. You can keep track of all these things. When we build out these states for the agents, every agent essentially gets their own login, their own seat essentially, and they get a list of states that are assigned to them. This basically just correlates with the states they're actually licensed in. Right. So when the vendors send in the phone calls, if a phone call's come, like for instance, if the phone call from the vendor was a Florida caller ID, and that's the kind of, person's in Florida, we wouldn't route it to Michelle because she doesn't have that on her list. Right. That's pretty much all that means. Just a way for us to route the calls. Now, in this instance, Michelle's in 5 different vendor queues. She's in this one, this one, this one. So that means that her admin put her in 5 different queues to receive phone calls from. This vendor could be $30 phone calls on a 40-second buffer. This one could be $25 on a 50-second buffer. They're all different. The buffer just means that if she receives a phone call from consumer-initiated inbounds here, the moment that she's on the phone for 40 seconds, it triggers the payout she has to pay, or the agency pays $30, right? That's all the vendors do it like this. All of them are different. When the agency or admin is picking, which queues you want to put what agents in, it literally says listed in the marketplace, like, okay, this vendor's this much. Here's a link. You can even see, we make them submit a link to the creative as well. So whoever's the admin can literally see, okay, in the marketplace before I even choose as like a menu, these, this vendor is this expensive, in this time, and they come from Facebook, and this is kind of what the creative looks like, right? So you can have an idea before you even choose what vendors you want to work with. One thing I wanted to circle back on, really, really huge feature here, is that for the agents, obviously the admin or the agency set caps on the agents, meaning like, okay, I only want Michelle, Susan, and Bob, my 3 agents, to receive 10 phone calls a day. We call that a cap, right? Once they hit their 10 calls a day, they're capped, they're paused, whatever. We've taken it a step further. We can set their caps on their CPAs dynamically, meaning that if you wanted to come in for the day and say, okay, Michelle, I'm going to set your CPA cap at $170. The moment you exceed that from the billable calls versus what you're closing it at, and it exceeds $170, it acts like a stop loss, sort of like a guardrail feature. The idea was to set it and forget it. So you don't have to worry, and you can literally cap your agents now based on their performance, which is absolutely huge because, again, we house the vendors and we house the agents. So we can keep track of both things and give you a ton of data to be able to make proactive decisions based on performance, which is an absolutely huge feature. I love that one. We call it like a baby monitoring feature. Essentially, you can set it and forget it. You don't have to worry that anybody's going to just burn through leads and cost you hundreds of or thousands of dollars, essentially. Now, again, that was just more information just surrounding performance. We can break it down for you even more. So if you wanted to look at your agent performance for the day, this is our agent performance feature here. This tab is sort of just like time card information. So you would see, okay, like you can break it down today, yesterday, 30 days. If we're looking at last 70 days, you could see, okay, how many hours have the agents been logged in? Talk time, wait time, pause time, wrap up. We basically keep track of all of it and then stack them against each other. If you wanted to look at a certain agent and their pause time for the last week or the last 30 days, you can build all these things out and literally see in real time how everybody is performing, which is absolutely huge because if you're running an agency and you have tons of agents or maybe a few, you still want to understand what it is everybody's doing and keep everybody honest. Not to say that, agents or anybody, working is doing anything wrong or whatever, but you want to have the insight. You want to be able to know what's going on in your business. And this gives you the ability to do that. Like, okay, Susan, you took 100 calls today and your talk time was 5 hours. That's amazing. Bob, you dialed out 5 times and your talk time was 30 minutes for 9 hours. What's going on, right? And you can literally dive deeper and see what's going on amongst your agency. Now, we also give you a ton of reporting surrounding the actual phone calls regarding CPAs, right? So we break down the CPA for you by agency. If you have a bunch of downlines, you can see how they're all closing in real time, against each other, right? If you have a whole bunch of them, we can break down the CPA for you by queue. So imagine that this is a vendor and this, imagine this is your agency. This is a vendor that you put a bunch of your own agents in. For this specific vendor, Carolina's closing at 21%. Kayla's closing at 17%. Cheyenne, 26%. What's going on with Jonathan? Closing at 4%. You could very simply just remove Jonathan from this queue and be like, okay, talk to him. Be like, hey, what's going on? You're closing at 4%. That's not so great. 81 incoming calls and you're closing at 4%. Not awesome. Your CPA is almost $500. Very simple fix, remove this queue. The power of this is that you're able to break down reports. You could look at a single agent. Maybe you have one of your agents in 5 different queues. You could build out a report to look at their CPAs for the last 7 days, a month, a week, yesterday, to see how they're performing in each queue. So if you built out a report and you wanted to look at, Bob in 4 different queues for the last 30 days, and you saw that in 3 of those queues, he's closing at 15% or higher, but one of them, he's closing at less than 5%, that's a quick fix. And then what you can do is we have 100 different queues in the marketplace. You could remove Bob from one that he's doing very poorly in and maybe try out some other ones. The idea is that when you combine the marketplace, which is really just a value add, with all of the statistics and all of the reporting that we give you on how they're performing on it, it makes you very dangerous in a good way, because now you can make all these decisions to just, greatly optimize your business and lower those CPAs. We're seeing agencies across the board like that use Enroll here drop their CPAs like 40 to 45%, just because they have so much data that they can literally look at daily and make educated moves on, because this is all just real data. It's all numbers that don't lie, and this is giving you just powerful control into what's going on. Again, we can break down CPA for you by the different types of phone calls you can purchase in the marketplace. So we have English, we have Spanish, there's raw calls or screen calls, we have Medicare Advantage, we have ACA, we have final expense as well. So we can break down how it's all performing. You can build out teams and you can see how the teams are performing in CPAs. You can even look at it by state. So this is looking at Pennsylvania as a state and all these different vendors that send in Pennsylvania phone calls. And for the state of Pennsylvania, this is how they're backing out, right? So you can build out reports to look at all sorts of things. So if you wanted to look at, the CPA of, all your agents in Florida and 2 different vendors that are passing in traffic for Florida, you can do that. However it is you want to break it down. You can also export any of this data and, fire the reports to like an Excel sheet, download them. You can fire it to a CRM. We are open API, so you can pretty much integrate with just like about anything with our system, which is really neat. Also want to highlight this. There's a dark mode. I like the dark mode a whole lot. I just can't, in this demo instance, I cannot continue in dark. So we have to go back to light, but I love the dark mode. I think it looks great. A little easier on the eyes. Now, everything I've showed you has been, really revolving around agent metrics, keeping track of day-to-day activities, insight into, phone call performance and dropping CPAs, and all of that is extremely important, right? Those were again the things I talked about in the beginning, where the owners of Enroll here were in the agency FMO game. They ended up selling to Humana, and they were basically left with, what do we do next? And they identified that there's not a dialer system out there that is perfect for Medicare folks. And that's why we have all these features in terms of, agent performance, call analysis, but compliance is just not, or it's just as important, if not more so. So what we built was an AI from the ground up that scores off the 26 different markers from CMS, looking at eligibility verification, required disclosure, summary benefits, scope of appointment, consent, right, call opening, all these things. We built this from the ground up. It is a real AI. It is actually learning off every phone call it takes. Every call that comes through the platform that the agents put a successful disposition on. So and I'll show you again what that looks like in a second. But once the agents basically set like something happened, it's recording that call. It's listening. So we house the recording for up to 10 years, but every call gets scored. Again, the idea is, I've talked to other agencies where before this, like I'm sure many of you know, like there's somebody whose job, or multiple people whose job it is to listen to phone calls and, make sure, do compliance checks and make sure nobody's saying the wrong thing, or, just trying to get a bunch of business. Because if you have agents that sell a bunch of, enrollments or, policies, I'm sorry, I'm not from the Medicare space, but if you have a bunch of agents absolutely slamming, what if they're not doing it the right way? This is where this comes in, right? And so this scores every single phone call for these different things of what's, of what is deemed like a compliant phone call. And we can break down the CPA for you by downline agency, by agent. Everybody gets a score so you can see their totals. And then every single phone call, again, gets scored. So you can see like, okay, let's look at a specific call, like this call here. The agent was Zaviria. It was an enrollment. She fired it to Sunfire. Incoming call, great, app submitted. This is the different lead information she inputted. So April Dennis, phone number, great, birthday. It was a billable call. There's $19 for this call. We housed the recording. It was a 42-minute phone call. We can even give you a transcription of it. And this is how she performed. Like her consumer experience, 77, okay. Summary benefits, 75%, not great. Eligibility verification. We have a little thing here. Your eligibility verification rate is below the threshold. whoever's admin can see how this is all happening post phone call in real time. So they can make, okay, we gotta talk to, Zaviria. We gotta get this up because he's really not doing so hot. It even dives deeper, giving like the actual calibration transcribed. So, did the agent use the required call opening? Agent provided full name, license status, required disclosure or recording disclosure. My name is blank. I'm a licensed agent. We block out the information we have to. We're type 2, SOC 2, HIPAA compliant. So again, it's scoring all of that 42-minute phone call, and you can see it here. Did the agent obtain and document permission, from the beneficiary prior to accessing? The agent did not, right? And it's literally telling you in real, like how she's doing. Did the agent determine valid election period eligibility? The agent did not identify or confirm a valid enrollment period, AEP, OEP. And again, and just keeps going, right? It's probably more information than you need, but it's absolutely vital. And we understood that, what if we could put it on autopilot for agencies? What if we could make the compliance something that it should be very, like a machine that is learning actually do it for you. And then you could see how everybody's performing and you listen to those phone calls as you see fit. And I think that was, extremely powerful for us to do. Now, to get a better idea of what the queues look like, it kind of looks like this. This isn't the whole marketplace. I'd have to click here and my demo's a little limited. But if this was your agency, whoever's watching this webinar, if this was your agency and you put different vendors in your like list that you to choose from, this is what it would look like. So you pick this vendor, this vendor, this vendor. These are just examples of different pricing. So again, for anybody curious, the marketplace is inbound phone calls only. Even the screen calls are technically inbound because there's somebody that went to like a Google ad, then clicked it. They went to a landing page and then they filled out a bunch of information and said, click the button. It's like, okay, yeah, call me. I want a quote, right? Then our vendor calls them, then transfer to Enrollhere. The majority of the phone calls that come in are raw inbound phone calls. So the idea is that when you see a phone number on TV that says, call this 800 number for Medicare, whoever's sitting on the couch that dials that number has no idea, but they're being routed within milliseconds to a bunch of potential buyers that are using a system like us, right? And so those calls come in. Your agents essentially are getting this phone call of somebody with high intent because they dialed in themselves. It's the highest level of intent. It's a conscious decision. It's user initiated. And that's, in theory, a layup. Is every single phone call that comes to the marketplace a slam dunk? No. but it's definitely has high intent. And it's worth a shot. And so that's what we offer. The phone call pricing is a range. It's anywhere from $15 to like $45. But that is typically the range. There's nothing cheaper or more expensive than that within the marketplace. And again, it gives you the ability to tap into 100 different queues where it's a water faucet. You can have as much or as little as you'd like, depending on the volume of your agents and what they can basically handle. And so these are, again, just if this was your vendor, your admin account, you choose these vendors to choose from. If you want to get deeper into a vendor, there's a lot more technical stuff you can build out. So you can build out scripts that populate per vendor for the agents, meaning that when the agents get a phone call, if it's coming from vendor A and it comes from Google and it kind of looks like this, you can have a different script come in for the agent dynamically versus then if it if the call came from vendor B and it comes from Instagram and it looks sort of like this, you can have dynamic scripts populate basically depending on what vendors passed in the call. You can build out a whole lot of stuff and just, billable settings. You can build custom vendor queues. So if you have a vendor that you like to work with and we want us to custom build that vendor out for you, we can do that. And very simply, if you want to just put agents in a vendor, you'd go to, who can receive from the queue, and then you choose your different agents, just click a button, and then you can add them to the queue, right? You can add advancements on the agents. You can add delays. So imagine Andrew here is like your number one person, slam dunks every single phone call. You could advance him like 10 minutes every single time, or 10 seconds, or however many seconds you want. But basically, you could set up an advancement for Andrew where every time he comes off the phone, he basically is pushed to the front of the line and is always like first available to take another call. Now, imagine Anthony here. You could set what's called a delay. So if Anthony's brand new and he's training up and you want him to wait for phone calls, after he gets off one call, you want him to wait like 20 minutes for another one just so he's ready. You can add delays, right? So you can do a lot of things in terms of just throttling who gets what. and, making sure calls get routed correctly. Now, before I do anything else, I'll just go ahead, and show you one last thing here. This will be the agent side. So what it looks like for the agents that you have that use the platform, it'll look like this, right? So when the agents log in, they would come into their own, they have their own one-to-one login. They can't see other calls that are being routed to other agents. They can only see the calls that are for them, listen to their own recordings, right? They would see their compliance summary, their live performance kind of statistics. This is the homepage. So if they wanted to come here, they could look at their agent performance, even like more broken down. They can look at their dialer, kind of like their phone calls, listen to them, right? They can build out a calendar, set appointments, schedule calls. So they can do quite a few things. And then they can, they have their own settings. They can choose like, okay, whatever it may be, build their voicemail. The only thing they really can do, though, unless you ask our onboarding team to give out custom permissions, is the agents essentially can only go pause and offline. The agents cannot listen to other phone calls that are not theirs. They can't add themselves to queues, right? They can't just be like, I'm going to choose, 20 different vendors for myself today. They can't increase their cap either. That's all done by the admin because, again, the admin is in charge of the agents and making sure everything is running correctly. So now if the agent Max here is logged, he's going to his account for the day. He's ready to take calls, 9 o'clock. Let's get it going. He would set himself as available. This is his phone number through the platform. Each agent gets their own phone number, set himself available. Okay, now I'm ready for phone calls. Awesome. Now, this is the different lead information the agents can put in, and we house this data within our system. You can build reports on any of this. We can even add custom subfields. So if there's anything else you want them to be able to input to create a tag, we can do that. They can also set custom notes just for themselves. Like, okay, Maria is she lives in Tampa Bay and she's a Bucks fan. I hope there's a Bucks fan on this call. But then again, you can also build scripts for your agents and give them a talk path. Like I mentioned earlier, you can build custom dynamic scripts per vendor that change, or you can have one that works for kind of everything, whatever you want to do. Now, the agent's Max, right? When he's on a call, this is what he's doing. Now, let's say the phone call's over. These are the dispositions. Okay, and we can add more of them too if you want. If you have other things you want us to set, you can add other custom dispositions. Now, if it's a do not call, there's be trash, if there's a recycle, like unwilling to switch, maybe you'll call him back next year. You can do all sorts of things. If it's an application submitted, you would click application submitted. I can't do it in this demo environment, won't let me, but it would then pop up another window where if we integrated whatever enrollment tool you're using, it would then fire the enrollment code via Pixel, basically firing data using our API to whatever enrollment tool you use. Sunfire, I think there's like Connects or something. And so then again, it would send it out and we count that towards the closing rate. Now, once they're done, they save and go to pause. Great. They're paused now. Awesome. They can also outbound dial. So again, we were built to initially be an inbound dialer system because, the marketplace, a lot of our clients have their own vendors. And, being an inbound dialer is also very much more compliant. But over time, we built out a lot of outbound functionality. So now at this point, agents using our system can actually power dial up to 10 to 1, 5 to 1, 10 to 1. You can use us to call your own data. We also just built out what we call a preview dialer. So now if you can tell our onboarding team, hey, I want to upload each agent a custom list of leads. And once we do that, your agents can now just, click another button and preview that lead. So like, okay, cool. Maria Jones, if the state was provided, we could have that. Never called. And then they can just dial and boom, just sit there and click the button and dial out on like your own data list, your own lead list that you have that you wanted us to integrate. Easy. Once they do that, they're back in the game. They can just put more notes, send information, leave call, and then they start all over again, right? Very simple. But again, the idea behind our platform was, something that is easy to use, looks great, but is also extremely, extremely powerful in terms of what it can deliver to you and your agency. Keeping your agents compliant, dropping CPAs drastically, having insight into literally everything that's going on within your agency. And then the marketplace, when you combine all of that with the calls that you essentially can buy and tap into in real time, the sky's the limit. And we've seen agencies, across the board. I think it depends on the size of the agency because we have clients that have 500 agents and we have clients that have 5. But we're seeing that based off the marketplace, agents are closing anywhere from 15 to like 21%, which is insane. The idea is that if you buy one of your agent's 20 phone calls and they know what they're doing on the phone, there's no reason they shouldn't get 3 or 4 enrollments out of that all day long. And so again, the system's very powerful. This is Enroll Here. This is the tool that we have. And I think that, it's honestly the best dialer out there, for the Medicare agency. And so, yeah, that's what I got. I don't want to overwhelm anybody, but that was my presentation. So if anybody has questions, please let me know.
I do see there is a question. It says, hello, John. Thank you for sharing all the information today. I'm a Medicare insurance agent, and I'm a big fan of this dialer. I've been thinking about getting set up with Enroll Here during the AEP when most people can enroll into new Medicare plans. If you're calling outside of the AEP with Enroll Here for Medicare leads, what do most agents do? Because you most likely won't be able to enroll them till October. Or is it a better system during the AEP only for Medicare agents? Thanks again for all the info.
Yeah, Michael, no problem. Well, that's a good question, Mike, because I don't come from the Medicare space. I did, software is my background. I've done it since I graduated college a long time ago. And I've been, I sell to a lot of folks, a lot of agencies. And from what I understand, they still are able to sell Medicare even outside of open enrollment. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I am aware of that, Michael. So when outside of the AEP, they're focusing on the low income market. So it's a lot of SNPs outside the.
Oh, like DSNP. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, of course. And also just so you know, Michael, the marketplace inbound phone calls, there are different queues. Like I think we added some under 70, there's some T65, but a lot of the Medicare ones are a mixed bag. So it's also great in terms of, because what you can do with the follow-up, with what you can do in setting notes, the way you can, we're not a CRM, by the way, but we have like sprinkles of CRM functionality. We can't say that we're a CRM because we don't do like the SMS marketing, the email drops. Like we don't do all, like we're not like a full-fledged HubSpot. Maybe at some point in the future, something to think about. But
yeah, and I think something that it's important to remember, everybody, is that Medicare leads are a long game. Some of the leads that you have coming in are going to be, people that are looking to retire maybe in the next year, and they're just curious about Medicare. But that's when you grab them and become their resource and set up timelines and follow up, make sure they're enrolled in A and B and all of that good stuff.
Yep.
You want to be their first Medicare touch because they'll remember you and they'll come back to you. So it is an investment for a future sale.
Of course. Yeah. Because, the way I talk about the marketplace, inbound phone calls, that's kind of my background in tech. They're leads. They're phone call leads. There's somebody that's dialing in themselves, whether they saw a phone number on TV or they saw the phone number on a piece of physical mail they received or a Google ad or an email. They're dialing a number and they're calling in. They want to talk to somebody. And so to your question, Michael, I do believe, people like Christy said, there's still deals you can get in there, but the long game, AP is not too far away. And these are just leads. They're somebody to talk to. If you can establish a connection with them, you can really take that and potentially close it. But yeah, great question.
Yeah. Well, thanks, John. I don't see any more questions. I did want to tell everybody that Enroll Here will be at our Medicare Connections conference on September 3rd. So you'll get an opportunity to talk to them in person and see their presentation again there. So looking forward to that.
Awesome. Yeah. If anybody has LinkedIn, please add me. Again, my name's John Saru, VP of Sales, and I love to talk about the dialer and talk about software and also Medicare. I'm trying to learn and grow my understanding of the industry. So please add me. If you ever have any questions, please reach out. If you ever want to set up a demo, I'd love to work with you.
All right. Thanks, John.
You got it,
Thanks, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.
Bye.